guys, welcome to Relationship Reflections Podcast. I'm Lexirosa. Today's episode is gonna look very unique and I'm so excited about it. This is the Barbie edition, and that's because when I saw the Barbie movie, I thought that it had so many incredible talking points and cool depictions between men versus women. It definitely had talking points relating to the relationship of being a woman within society. It had discussions related to gender roles, societal pressures, systematic things. And so I really wanted to do an episode that related to a reflection of the Barbie movie. However, my mom had an even better idea. She had a group of women who had not seen the movie wanting to see it. So what we did is we threw a Barbie party and we had a variety of voices in the room. We had moms with their students, with their kids. We had multi-generational, multi-ethnic, with a variety of different stories. You're just gonna have to hear the podcast to see where people are from, coming from immigrant families, leading all the way up to very successful people in the room. What I love about this episode is you are gonna hear a variety of perspective. Those that like the film, and those that did not like it, strongly disliked it actually. So I want you to go ahead and take a listen to this episode, and trust me, you're gonna wanna hear it all the way to the end because there are some highs and lows to this one. Okay, first timers, say what your thought was of the film.
I was expecting something more. I did. It wasn't what I expected. Some parts literally made me think. Some parts were just, I don't know. I don't want to say inappropriate, but maybe the way I look at it and stuff. But I wasn't impressed at all.
Did you have Barbies growing up?
I never had Barbie growing up. Anna and I talk about it recently. When I had her, I finally was able to get stuff, expensive stuff. And so it looks like when she was born, I was getting things for her, but it wasn't really for her. I was getting it for myself. I finally wanted to have something I never was able to have while growing up. So it was all about me.
Well, I feel like she holds Barbie to a higher regard because it was something she couldn't attain and she wanted it. And so then to see it, the portrayal in the movie to not what she had built up in her head, or that it wasn't as positive as that you might have wanted it to.
I wasn't really impressed with Barbie itself. I really like those real baby dolls.
You know, I can relate to that because as a little girl, I did have Barbies, but it was like I had to do chores and save up so that I could get a Barbie. So when I had the girls, I would always buy them collectible Barbies, and they were something very. They weren't allowed to take them out of the box. I still have them. But the thing that stood out to me about the movie was the corporate context of, like, at one point when it was turning into Ken's world and they were making all these profits, one of the executives said, well, who cares? We're making money. Why do we care? Like, they didn't care about what the values were, what the mission of the company or whatever their core values were. That obviously didn't even come up, but the fact that he was just about profit, that was like, yeah, that exists sometimes. And, sometimes we have men in power that are just out of touch also with the lives and the people that they're managing. It's not just about it's not just about Wall Street. It's not just about the stock price. There's actual lives, hundreds of people that report through us that the decisions that you make impact, and there's just no connection.
I enjoyed the Barbie movie. I enjoyed the nostalgia of what Barbie used to be. And I think the movie was a parody on life, and I really enjoyed the humor, and I thought it was very well done. I did have a lot of sympathy for Ken because he became and put himself in women's shoes in many ways because it was a flipped world. Mm-hmm. And so I did have a lot of sympathy for his character as well.
I thought it was a really good movie, just showing how the roles could be reversed and putting some perspective on it. in having people being able to reflect and be more able to relate to what some women struggle with.
I liked it more this time than the first time because I thought the movie was going to be different the first time. I didn't think it would be as deep as it was.
It was deep. There were deep moments. Even like the relationship between the mom and the daughter and the teenager
I was waiting for you to comment on that.
Yeah, just like, you have your little girl or your little boy, because I've experienced both, and they're your little buddy and your little friend for a long time, and then one day they become teenagers, and then they're like, don't touch me, don't talk to me, like, you're so weird. It just turns, and it's so hurtful as a parent. But then they grow up, and then they come back, thank God.
But we were like that to our moms too, so
That's true.
Yes.
I really enjoyed the movie on the surface. I liked the fashion and the music, and I thought it was really upbeat, and so I enjoyed all of those aspects. I'm a big Margot Robbie fan. I did like the story. You could tell that it was hyperbolized in many aspects. I think they were trying to cover a lot, whether it was the mother-daughter relationships or the patriarchy or even a relationship between, like, a romantic relationship. I think they were trying to cover a lot in a short period of time. And they were also trying to add humor to it, and they were trying to take it in a lot of different directions. So then I think in parts the messaging got lost a little bit because we weren't sure, like, is it supposed to be a musical? Is it supposed to be? So I think it lost some of those aspects along the way. But overall, I thought it was a super cute movie. I liked the message. I liked seeing the role reversals, and I liked how it brought humor to some serious topics that we deal with on a daily basis in society.
So in the opening intro montage, there's a Barbie and doll, and that's like what sets us up into this. What were some of your guys' thoughts? Like with different generations, I want to know your thoughts, because when I saw that in the film, I was like, this is genius. But some of my close friends were like, I don't even remember. And I think, so I'm in my 30s, they're in their 20s. The girls in our 20s were like, I never even had dolls like that. And then I was like, what? I remember we had dolls.
I was never into baby dolls. I think of any dolls that I would have been into, it would have been probably Barbie the most. But that also represents that I've never really, other than my own children, been into children. I never liked to babysit when I was a kid. I've never been one of those women that go, oh, look at the baby. And so I think they inherited a little of that in me.
I don't like kids. I don't want them. I don't want to talk to them.
I grew up more so with Monster High dolls than Barbies, which is basically the same concept, but
Cooler.
Different spin on it, I guess.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's like they're Barbies, but they're monsters, like
a Dracula.
Frankenstein.
I really like baby dolls. I really did. But then again, I never had a Barbie girl, but I was building my own Barbie houses. I mean, you just get a shoebox and that I was always dreaming about. I told you, I always wanted to have a Barbie doll house. I always wanted to. But Barbie, again, I mean, until I had you, and I just wanted for you to have it, but more I wanted it for myself to experience it and stuff. So yeah, I bought a few of them, but
And I wanted it because I thought I was supposed to want it, but I don't really think I was that into dolls or that into.
You're supposed to want it for me.
Yeah.
So thank you. You
Yeah,
belong.
I played along and I was like, sure, let's get it. But I don't think that I was ever into Barbies or into baby dolls. I was into stuffed animals more, if anything.
Wow. You were.
Yeah, I was more into stuffed animals, but I pretended along with the Barbie dolls and the dolls because she would buy them for me, and then I wasn't going to be like, I don't like them. Yeah.
That was very nice of you. Thank you.
Let's talk about the paradigm where women are in all these positions in Barbie land. right? So they put her, women in politics, in construction, Nobel Prize winners. And then she steps into the real world and sees the construction and is expecting women, and then it's men. I guess, what are your guys' take on kind of how the Barbie movie did that?
I never thought about the fact that, Barbie was limitless and how it was intended to be like a empowering toy or representation for little girls. I never thought of it that way until I saw it in the movie.
I thought it was a little bit of a generational divide, because I definitely know in the past that girls and women couldn't do everything, but I very much grew up in a society and in a family where you could grow up to be whatever you wanted, whether it was women in STEM or women in politics or women on the Supreme Court. That thankfully was a norm for me. That is something that I would see. My mom was a woman in business. I saw that every day. I had a mom in the house and a working mom, and that was very much a norm for me. And so I'm glad that the movie celebrated that paradox, but it was almost an extreme, like we were drawing attention to something that maybe we should just say is a norm. And I know that there's still room for growth, absolutely. And thankfully, like in the area that I work and in the society and the circles that I run in, that it's a norm. And I know that that's not the same for everyone, and there's absolutely room for growth. But I think we should also celebrate the barriers that we've already cut down.
So I come from a different generation than you. So I come from when women were still largely objectified, and women were second place to men. And parents, my own parents, would say to me, "Oh, marry a rich man. That's how you get ahead." And so it's like, and yet also the same parents who said you can do anything, and we empower you. So there's two messages that you grow up with in life. And I think the future generations are so much further along. Our generation too, because of women before us, and I think that will continue to perpetuate, which is good. But I still look around, and I'm even guilty of it, of thinking, oh, that's a man's profession, or like construction, right? Like that would be in my mind, if I don't think about it, my gut instinct would be, oh, that's what men do.
And I don't think that way.
That's great. Yeah. And I wish I didn't, but I correct myself. But like even women can classify ourselves or men in certain ways. And I think we have to continue to push beyond those misconceptions and continue to try to grow beyond that. And so I think we've come a long way. I think there's still a lot further to go, but we do need to celebrate, as you've said, the successes that we've had.
I think it's a good message to put out just for like kids so they can grow up knowing that. But I feel like just because of when I like grew up and what my like parents said, I already kind of knew that like women can be whatever they want to be. And like now they can if they put their minds to it.
Even though people say that, like later in the film when they say they're doing patriarchy well, they're just hiding it. I feel like that is still prevalent. And even when Barbie got like catcalled, I know that like growing up, it's like usually the younger you are, the more it happens. Because in 8th grade, I would get honked at walking down the street, and now it's like happening less.
That's alarming that you were catcalled in 8th grade.
It happened a lot, actually.
Wow. That's another subject. We'll have to find out where this was happening.
No, thank you for your honesty. And I love both of your perspectives. I think that gives, I love everyone's perspective, but that gives good insight. You are right, though. There's biases. Unconscious biases that are in society. And you're right, the comment in the film about like patriarchy still exists. We just hide it better. Yes. Was an interesting one.
One thing we can do to change those biases, and we actually, to call us out, are guilty of it. We've been saying women in STEM, women in golf, women scholarships. And by taking that away and not putting the emphasis on the gender and just saying like students in STEM or student golfers or student athletes, whatever you might say, taking the gender out of it. But then the opposite side is we do want to celebrate the gender because it is a difference and we do want to celebrate it. So then that's where the argument comes in. Do we take the gender vocabulary out of it and just celebrate the students in it? And maybe those biases will go away, but then will the celebration go away?
And will the affirmative action toward those gender equalities go away if you don't recognize it. It's hard to know.
So this film really does play, I think that's a really good play on
Female president, female Supreme Court, yeah.
well, it plays on systematic biases we already have built into society. Do you guys think the film did a good job of reversing the roles? So, right, I think part of like the underlying view, and maybe we all have different views on that, was that they tried to make it so Ken would experience what a life where women are in power, right? So like the opposite of patriarchy. And then when Ken enters into the real world, the men are more in power. Do you think this film actually plays into helping transform thought in society to kind of remove those biases? I don't know.
I don't think this film's gonna change it, but you have to call it out and acknowledge it, and that's the beginning of change.
Yeah, I don't think I agree.
And having discussions like this, honest discussions, helps to drive change.
I also think I hope it was very exaggerated. Like, I almost felt like I was looking back at like the 1950s, 1980s, where women's only value is in how men see them, and they do everything in their appearance to be good enough to catch a husband or be good for men in some way, shape, or form. But I still think there are a lot of those biases that still exist today. And so it was kind of interesting, and it was comical. It was a parody. It was comical to see it and to call it out. So I enjoyed it.
I think it did a good job, especially with testing some people. Like, if someone watches the film and they think, oh, it's anti-men, it's almost like seeing how if you reverse the roles, all of a sudden it's like we're hating men instead of showing perspective. And I think oftentimes when we give more celebration to women, men think that it's oppression, when like if we have equal rights and they don't have the first say or first go at everything, they think it's oppression because they're not prioritized.
Did anyone think that this film was hating on men? I heard that a lot, actually.
I honestly do think that film been all over the place. Mm-hmm. Some things are really something that we do see on a daily basis, but I've never felt like I cannot get a position that man could, or I cannot get a job because I'm a woman. I've never felt that way. Whatever I put my thoughts into, I'll get to it. It's all about what you want, how hard you work for it. It's not about man or woman.
But how do you explain all these men that are in the C-suite and leadership positions when there are many women in the organization who can very well be in those same positions yet are not, or represent a greater portion of the workforce than in some industries than men, yet all these seats at the top are men?
Are women applying? Do you have the statistics? Are they applying for those positions?
That's right. Did we want it to be on those positions?
Is there a systemic reason that they're not applying? And is there societal norms that hold them back from being able to do so? I think it's like saying, if you grew up in a slum, bad example maybe, but can you be expected to have the same amount of momentum as someone who didn't? And I think that there's things that have held women back for years that we don't have the same momentum. We're catching up, but the momentum is still not where it is compared to men.
There's no man can hold me back. I mean, it's not that.
I think that sometimes what we talk about being held back, and I understand what you're saying, it's definitely there, but part of it is being a mom and wanting to have better hours and being able to stay home. And a lot of time women say that also needs to be celebrated. I didn't apply for that position because I valued different hours, or I wanted to be home, or I wanted to go to my child's soccer game. And that's not a punishment, and that shouldn't be looked down upon. That was a choice that those women have made to not apply for those positions.
Totally.
And that's why men are at the top, and those men are missing their kids' soccer games, and they're not necessarily doing things around the house or having dinner on the table, and women are doing those things, and a lot of them want to be doing those things. It's not a punishment. It's not because they have to be doing those. They're choosing to do those things, and they're choosing not to take those positions at the top.
I have a little bit of a different perspective. I do think there is systematic things in place. If we even take a look at historically, women were not viewed as equal in so many facets in different places. I mean, it's interesting. I'm in seminary right now, and it's like literally the validity of a woman's voice. It's like 2 women were equal to the voice of 1 man in so many things in terms of credentialing and credibility. But then even if we take a look at like later on as time has progressed, I can even name especially, I am a CEO. I started a marketing company, and I sat in many meetings where I was the only woman. And have sat in meetings too where I was a television reporter, and I had a boss who'd say, I'm taking you off the story because I don't trust you. And he would hire a man into the certain political stories. So there were certain biases favoring the credibility of men being greater than women. And I think that was put in, like, whether it can see it consciously or not, like systemically, that's been since before maybe even my birth, right? Like there's systemic biases.
There's unconscious biases that exist that I don't know what we can do to erase them. Calling them out, being aware of them, but it's not conscious.
Because it's been underneath the surface.
Yeah. I think that women can do anything, but it's often harder for them. And even though if you do think that a man can't take your place because you won't let them, you often have to work harder than that man to get that place, which is still a problem. Even though you can get what you want, it should be an equal fight in it, rather than you having to work like 10 times harder for it.
I feel like I've been bashing men, and that wasn't my intention. It's because I actually don't think, I think that there are many men that support women, and they're caught into this paradox as well. So they're part of this system, just like the government, right? Sometimes you look at the system that you're in and you go, how do we change the system? And it's not as easy as just like everyone changing their thoughts. There's some things embedded systemically that are hard to reverse and take years and years. So I don't want to come off as bashing men, because I actually have found many men in my own life and my own career that have been very supportive, but I think that there is still a long way to go.
It's definitely not directed toward all men, because there's plenty of men who support like just making it easier and more equal for women. But maybe that's why some people are getting upset, because I think it's directed to everyone, or like all men.
What did you guys think? Mom, you said a quote. You said, why do they not have any women at the table when it went to the CEO circle? Thoughts?
Well, just like Nikki said earlier, why is it that those C-suite positions, there's not enough women? And often, and ironically in the movie, it's girls' dolls, and they had no women at the table thinking of the new ideas, thinking from a perspective of a woman. And maybe they had women in other levels that...
Sacha's mom was there.
She was on the outside.
She was
exactly, on the outside. But those top decision-making positions, there were no women at the table for a company that produces toys that are targeted towards little girls. So that was just ironic.
I will just say that, the 3 of us have had the privilege of working together in different environments. And in all of the environments when we've worked, right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't think our situations were unique. The vast majority of people on the leadership team are men.
I'd like to see the number of women applicants for those positions and the women not getting those positions.
I couldn't tell you the number of women to men. I'd have to look that up. But I can draw another correlation. When you look at diversity candidates, There are much fewer diversity candidates for those level of positions, but there's also much fewer diversity candidates at mid-level positions that would qualify them to even consider those roles and to consider that advancement. So I go back to my systemic comment earlier that in many ways, women have been oppressed, as have diversity candidates over the years, for one reason or another, not anyone in particular to blame, but there's a reason if you're seeing less applicants. It's not just because they've chosen not to apply. It's because along the way, they have not been qualified to do so.
I'd be interested to see where that qualification goes south, because 64% of college students are female. So women are getting the education, women are getting master's degrees. The statistics show that women are more educated in 2023 than males. So I would be interesting to see what happens between the time that they leave their masters and they start applying into the workforce. The four of us, we are on hiring committees for different jobs. Am I correct on that? You guys all hire different staffs. And we don't shy away from the conversations. We openly say, we are looking for a female candidate. We are looking for a candidate of more diverse background. We're not shying away from these conversations. We're still looking for the best candidate for the job. That is absolutely the priority. But I think that a step in the taking informed action is being open to having those conversations. It's not a boogeyman conversation. It's not saying we need to hire a woman this week or we need to hire someone of color this week, a person of diverse background, but just having those conversations and saying, what does our population look like? What does our consumer or the people that we serve, what does our population look like? And what is the best needs from a gender perspective? It is okay to have those conversations.
But do you think men are having those conversations? If it was all men in the room, do you think they would even consider having those conversations?
I think some are. I've worked with, I think some are doing it because it's what they're supposed to do, and so they acknowledge that they need to do it. I think some are genuinely trying to do it. And I want to say something that you said earlier about having to ask, and none of us should ever have to ask, but the reality is in your career, you do have to get up and promote yourself and ask, and I think you were saying that, Anna, earlier. And I have seen a significant change. Having been in hiring roles for over 20 years, I am so impressed by the women that I see nowadays, all generations. We have learned to ask. Years ago, no one asked or negotiated salary or put themselves out there. And I think a lot of our system has changed to enable people to do so, not just women, but men and everyone. And people are now asking, and I love that, because you never used to hear it 15 years ago. And now almost every time you extend an offer to someone, there's an ask in it on the other side for some kind of negotiation. So I think as a society, in many ways, we are getting better.
We can't necessarily control the males at the table, but what we can control is ourselves and making sure that we advocate for ourselves, dressing the way that we want to dress, of course, professional, but not necessarily dressing down because we are a woman in business, or not giving that like dumb bimbo and giggling at all the jokes, all of those norms that a lot of women feel like they have to do. But really not playing into those stereotypes, teaching our daughters that they don't have to fit into that stereotype, that they can be articulate, they can dress how they want, they can drive the cars that they want, that they can ask for a seat at the table and that they deserve a seat at the table, and then they can go home and put on sweats and be a mom and go to soccer games and like really do it all like Barbie. And I think that instead of worrying about the men to some extent, really just talking to other women and advocating for other women and showing them, demonstrating that you can be a kick-ass CEO and a kick-ass HR and VP of a lot of important things. I'm not sure what your title is, but, and having those conversations. And instead of talking about what are the men doing and not doing, talking about like what we can do.
How do we empower ourselves? You're absolutely right.
Yep.
So yeah, what did you think of the closing monologue? And then we'll do the end of the film.
I thought the closing monologue was spot on. It's hard to try. There is an unrealistic expectation on women that you have to be everything, and you got to be perfect, that you got to find that perfect little balance, this little, this perfect sweet spot right in between. It's a lot. It's a lot of pressure. You got to be great at work, great at home. You got to be a good mom, a good friend. It's hard.
I think that, like, even if like women are doing everything they can except for like one thing, that everybody's gonna focus on that one thing. But so just to focus more on what you're doing right.
I think oftentimes you try to focus on what you're doing good in your life, but often people bring you down for what you're not doing rather than what you are, and bring that out rather than how you're doing something good, because oftentimes men can get off with things that they did wrong easier than women, even without taking like responsibility for it sometimes. And it's harder as a woman, I guess, because people like to point out what you do wrong. Oftentimes people expect you to be perfect when that's impossible.
Agreed.
It kind of reminds me, not just women and men, but how judgmental the world is. Yes, and how unforgiving it is, especially on social media, of other people. And just to kind of remember that we're all human. And it's a lesson for all of us, because I think we all have moments of judgment against others. And until you've walked in their shoes, it's hard to really know what someone else is experiencing. So I think, you hear a lot about kindness nowadays, and like you hear people say, be kind. And I think it's now relevant more than ever, because there's not a lot of forgiveness right now in the world. And I think we could all be kinder to one another.
I was thinking about the fact that we, as women, we need to do a lot more things. We have to do more things that man does. And that's why Anna said start from, the beginning. So I focused on my career at first. And it wasn't so much career, it was a job at first. It was something that brings food to the table. And I couldn't do it all at once. I have to be a teller at the bank, work myself up to the banker's position and stuff. And then my daughter's teachers' parents' conferences wasn't my priority. Of course I was there. Of course I had to call. I will drop her at school at 8 o'clock in the morning with no supervision. And I'll be like pretty sure that my daughter will be taken care of. She'll take care of herself. And somewhere there, I'll just bring her to a secretary. I'll be like, bye, I need to be at work by 9 o'clock. And later on, with my son, I felt like I missed those years. I had to focus more on my family, not career. And it was just something that guilt was killing me inside. And on top of it, she would mention it every time, every moment she had. She'll be like, oh, wait, that Carly's mom was there for our whatever trip we went. I don't remember my mom there. So with Ellen, I was trying to do every single one. I was chaperoning for everything. I was in every single parents, teachers conferences. I made it work, but I never did it for Anne. I don't think I was present for any teachers' parents conferences. On the phone, yes, I was supportive. I did everything I could, but not as much. So
I became a teacher, just to be clear.
It's interesting. You talk about how now you're a teacher. I think part of the reason I do, like, I'm studying social work and faith, and I'm interested in how they intersect, but I work with kids that come maybe from absent parented homes. So I think, no, hear me out. No, there's no judgment on that. But I think I became a leader, a successful student. And so it doesn't matter. Yes, you were working all the time, but the qualities that you built within Allison and I, and hopefully Blake, he was born in a different time frame and where you had a lot of established security in your life. But you were a kid raising a kid, but you built us with values of school coming first, working hard. And that's in who Allison and I are. And so we've achieved and excelled at life. We did not become a statistic. We did not. So I think the reason I work with kids who maybe come from, because absence in households can be for different reasons, because you have a super hardworking parent, but somebody else might be because their parent is an addict, right? And that's just the homes of the children I work with. But the impact of a student, they have somewhat of a choice, and could be controversial, but I think that children are experiencing their environment, they're interpreting their environment, but as you get older, when you become a teen, this is why I work with high schoolers, there comes a point where there is some type of autonomy of who do you want to become, and there's a choice within who they want to become. And there might be harder barriers, there might be more challenging circumstances, but then there's actually, and we can get into a ton of psychology statistics, but what's the difference between a child who's had a lot of hard times and goes down the system, and the child that has a lot of hard times that has a multiplication of resilience and climbs up? I think that you instilled really hardworking values in us, deep values of working hard and pushing through and resilient. But I think the gap maybe was emotional empathy, and I think that's why I work super strongly in that field. But I said this in a different podcast, that I wouldn't change it, actually. I look back and I think exactly who I am is because of the upbringing I had. And in the role model of my life, it would be you, because you found a way to navigate and excel and achieve and be successful and be a good person all in the midst of that, no matter what obstacles you overcame. And so, yeah, I think that, I do think, though, I am not a mom or married in my 30s for a very intentional reason. I think I am very focused on my career, and I'm not, and we talk about this a lot too, I love serving with kids, but I don't, at this time, I'm not willing to give up my independence and my freedom, because I do know that there is a level, it requires that to do it well. And so I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I think I learned a lot from you as an adult. And I'll also name one thing. I think looking back, I don't think I actually had an appreciation for that, though, till I got older. So I don't even know if you guys have an appreciation rate for your mom now, but I think it wasn't until I got older that I got to go, man, you were how old and you were going to work and coming home? But at the time, I might have been like, why weren't you at my basketball game? Right. You were never at my basketball games.
When I was younger, I feel like I was more ungrateful about what my mom did for me. But if I act a certain way, sometimes I feel guilty because she does a lot for us. But
I know you appreciate it.
But yeah, I try to focus on the good things she does for us and be more grateful about it. But
Usually if I have conflict with her, I try to just separate myself from the situation. I think it's hard in some aspect to do so many things at one time, which I can relate to as well, with school and after school activities, and always going and not having the motivation to do it. And I think that can be hard for sure. So I admire that.
The one thing I noticed about all of us, and I think we have generations amongst this whole group here, of parents who were not given anything and who worked really hard in life to get where they were. And I think that set the foundation and the example for who we have become as adults. And I speak for myself and my husband, knowing how hard we work and that we have a good work ethic. And I know that's true of all of you. And then I see that even in my kids, already that foundation is there, that they are going to be very committed and hardworking and dedicated to whatever it is that they do. So it's very nice.
Whether it's coming from an immigrant mentality, which really instilled a lot in me and my family, or different generational aspects. But as much as I gave my mom a hard time, I think it relates back to the Barbie movie. I was seeing all of these mom comes to parent-teacher conferences and be room moms, and I thought that was the norm because that was what was right in front of me. And I think we need to reiterate to society that that doesn't have to be the norm. The norm can be a working mom, or it can be a mom who's fighting overseas, or everyone's norm is different. And I think Barbie tried to portray that in some ways. Barbie can be a lot of different things. A woman can be a lot of different things. There's a lot of different norms. So even though I gave my mom a hard time for maybe not being at the small things, she was very much always there for the big things, and obviously played a huge role in who I am today. And the fact that I can articulate these very higher order thinking things is a testament to her. And so I think in the short run, was I annoyed that she wasn't at my dance whatever class at right time to pick me up at the right time? And I made sure to tell her that. And I think it's because she raised me to be strong and to articulate, hey, I'm mad about this, or I didn't see this. Part of that was also an influence from her. So the good, the bad, and the ugly were all influences.
Let's talk about that ending. I thought she was going for a job too.
I know.
And then when it didn't turn out that, then that's where we ended.
An interview, I was pretty sure.
No, it was a PSA to go to the lady doctor.
Yes. Okay. So what are your guys' thoughts on the end? It went, I thought, like, why, my question is, why didn't it end with the Ruth conversation? You know, it could have ended right then and there where she's like,
PSA.
but then it ended with
Because now she's
a gyno.
woman. I think that was the what's a real woman? Oh, and that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, do you think it was pushing like gender a little bit maybe?
Gynecologist.
But part of the casting, they had a transgender woman in the casting, so I don't know if the directors, I have no idea. That is
That's
a good,
getting way too deep.
whoa, that's good.
Ended with her and Ruth. When they standing there, it was, I was right there and then.
Yeah, I thought that would have been a great ending.
Unless, again, she's looking for a job. I didn't understand that part, but again.
Me too.
You don't have to have a job to be a real woman.
I think the first time I saw the movie, I thought it was ending on a light note. Like, and I took it to mean she's going to go get genitalia. Like, I kind of thought like, okay, she's coming out of plastic land and this is her way to integrate into society. But maybe that was how I took it the first time. But then now I realize what a weak ending it was, because I think they tried to end on this humorous note, and they could have actually ended on something more meaningful, like with her last conversation with Ruth.
Do you remember when, like, Weird Barbie was asking stereotypical Barbie if she wanted to go to the real world or stay in the normal, like, Barbie world? And she had a pink high heel, and a brown sandal. Yeah, and the last scene, she was wearing a pink sandal, which was, like, combined of each to show that she was, like, still Barbie, but she was, like a human now in the real world. And I think they just showed her going to the gynecologist because they wanted to show that, you know, she was just doing something that everybody does. Maybe she was proud to be a woman.
I like the ending. I thought after that deep conversation, I think they were just trying to end it on a comedic note. Like, throughout the film, they had a lot of comedy, and I think that's just what they're trying to get at. Especially since I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a job interview, which could have been, like, more comedic. I just think that's what they were trying to get at there.
Thanks so much for checking out the Relationship Reflections podcast. If you like what you hear, go ahead and click subscribe or follow so that you don't miss a beat with any of the other episodes that we will be dropping every single month. And if you don't follow us in all the other platforms that we have, I encourage you to check out Loving with Lexi on Instagram, or my nonprofit, becamebrave.com, where you can learn a little bit more about the variety of things we're doing to work on mental health with our youth in the future. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We'll see you next time.